Hey everybody, I was going to talk a little bit about clinical trial participation. Clinical trials are how we get new drugs and new therapies approved for various diseases. To find out if something is safe and effective, you really have to test it, and typically you would test it by having a group of patients and giving a medication or treatment to one group and having a similar group receiving a placebo or no treatment at all, or sometimes just their background therapy, and comparing how the two groups do, both in terms of adverse effects or bad things that might happen during the course of the trial, as well as good effects as measured by some sort of endpoint. For example, if we were testing a medication for blood pressure, we'd want to compare how the blood pressures were with the medicine versus without the medicine. If it was a medicine for shortness of breath or exercise performance, we could measure that by measuring how far somebody could walk, for example, and comparing before the treatment and after the treatment. And of course, side effects would be reported carefully to determine if these medicines were safe enough to be worth the risk based on how their effectiveness was. Most clinical trials that patients would participate in are either phase 3 trials, which are prior to a drug being approved by the Federal Food and Drug Administration, or they would be phase 4 trials, which are testing drugs that are already approved but still had some unanswered questions, perhaps about long-term safety. To get in a clinical trial, you have to have the right disease that is being tested, you have to be willing to participate, and there are usually some inclusion and exclusion criteria. How do you find a clinical trial? The easiest way is to look on a website called clinicaltrials.gov, where you can search by disease state, by medicine, by sponsor, by a variety of criteria to find trials that are geographically close enough that you can travel for the study. What are the advantages of being in a clinical trial? Well, if you're in a clinical trial, you can get access to therapies before they are approved. And if you have a disease that's not going so well with standard therapy, you may be looking for better options. Most of these medications, they wouldn't be doing the trial if they didn't already have a pretty good idea that the drug might be effective. But they need to prove this to the government and also prove that the medicine is safe. The other thing that happens when you're in a clinical trial is that the medications are free. Some of these medications might cost thousands or tens of thousands of dollars once approved, but if you're in the clinical trial, the medication is free. The doctor visits to evaluate your response to the therapy are free. Any testing or laboratory testing to qualify you for the trial or to monitor the effects of the medication during the trial are completely free. Sometimes the sponsor will even pay for travel expenses if you don't live close to the study site. One clinical trial I was involved with was testing a device, and we had patients traveling from many states away, as far as 1,000 miles, to get into this because they were desperate to take advantage of this treatment for emphysema. What are the disadvantages of being in a trial? Well, of course, there's always the unknown. There's always the possibility that once the study starts that we'll find out that the medication has some hazard, such as causing abnormal liver function studies or causing kidney problems or some other issue. And if there's an obvious difference between the treatment and the placebo group, the trial will often be stopped early, either for good news or for bad news. For example, if the people in the treatment group start dying or having other severe problems, the study is going to be stopped if it's obvious the medication has safety issues. On the other hand, if the medication is obviously effective, it would not be ethical to continue to withhold the medication from people in the placebo group, and this might be another reason why the study could be stopped short. The other hazard of being in a clinical trial is you have a medication that is probably effective. What if you wind up in the placebo group? If you have a disease that is progressive or fatal and is not doing very well and you wind up in the placebo group, then you pretty much know what the outcome is going to be, and it may not be a good one. But somebody has to be in a placebo group, or otherwise you really can't prove that the medication is better than no treatment at all. Many medical practices participate in clinical trials even if they are not part of academic medical centers. Our group has a research department and at any given time is operating between 5 and 10 clinical trials, mostly for medications, but occasionally for devices. These cover a variety of diseases, in our case for COPD, for sarcoidosis, for chronic infections, for pulmonary arterial hypertension. There's really no limit to the types of trials you can do, but if you're a study site such as ourselves, we don't want to take on trials for which we don't have patients that might qualify, because there's a certain amount of paperwork and training involved, and you have to do recruiting, and you don't want to go through all this trouble if you're only going to recruit 1 or 2 patients. Trials are pretty popular with patients. Patients are eager to participate. They like getting the extra attention, they like getting the free care, and they especially like getting access to medications that may improve their life. Again, check out clinicaltrials.gov for information on trials that may still be recruiting patients in your area. They will have contact information where you can find out what the qualifications are to be in the trial. Hopefully this helped you understand how clinical trials work and why they're so popular among patients. If you have any further questions, leave them in the comments below and I'll get back to you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video with others that you think might be interested in participating in clinical trials. Until next time, see you later.